Hello everyone, it's Sunday, May 7, 2023. There's one more aspect of the Trinity I need to critique, which is the double paternity of the Son. We talked about how the Son and Spirit within the system of Orthodox Christianity, even though unintended, are ultimately subordinate to the Father, because the hypostatic property of the Father as unoriginate cause is a property of the divine nature being unoriginate and uncaused. So the Father, under this scheme, partakes of the divine nature to a greater degree as a result than the Son and Spirit. So keeping that in mind, we have this issue of the double paternity of the Logos, of the Son, which is clearly laid out in the Nicene Creed, where it says that the Father or the Son was begotten of the Father from before all worlds. And then a later clause says that the Son, according to his humanity, according to the flesh, was conceived by the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary. So in terms of the humanity, the Spirit acts more or less, or takes the role of a husband, I guess you could say, to Mary in the birth of the God-man according to the flesh. What's very interesting about this is the error that I just summarized a moment ago, that we covered in a previous video, or two previous videos, about the subordination, plays itself out consistently in the doctrine of double paternity, even though it isn't noticed by those propagating it. So it makes sense then that what we have is a division in the second person of the Trinity, the Son, between his uncreated divinity, the divine person, and the created body and soul, the human aspect. And the Father, so you have, and as a result, you have two separate sources originating each of these aspects of the Son. Those sources being the Father and the Spirit, respectively. And because the Spirit is subordinate to the Father, it makes sense that you would see the Father originating or causing the person proper of the Logos, the divine person, whereas you have the Spirit causing the created aspect, the humanity, the body and soul. So what this does is it confirms another point I made several videos back about how the doctrine of the incarnation is ultimately a reiteration or representation of the dualistic doctrine of creation ex nihilo, rather than the incarnation being a bridging of the separation between God and creation. You're simply seeing in miniature or microcosmically in the person of Christ a representation of that unbridgeable chasm separating God the Creator from his creation. Because on the one side you have the uncreated divinity of the Logos, the divine person together with the divine nature that he hypostatizes. And then on the other side, you have the created body and soul of Jesus. So what is the thing? What is the element that unites the two into a permanent union, such that when you think of the Logos, you have to think of both the body and the divinity together and affirm that somehow he is 100% divine and 100% human after the incarnation. I can't think of a third thing. There was just divinity, uncreatedness, in other words, and then createdness, his body and his soul. That pretty much summarizes what I wanted to say on that point. The duality, duality in Christianity threads through every aspect of Christian doctrine. And you'll start, once you see this pattern clearly for what it is, you will notice it in every aspect of Christian theology, from the doctrine of creation to the theology of the Trinity itself, this distinction between nature and person, so you have these two separate principles. We discussed this before as well within the Trinity itself, nature and person, where nature sort of embodies or instantiates the principle of this Unitarian monotheistic undifferentiated concept. And then hypostasis is a classification for multiplicity or plurality, because they teach that you can't have any such thing as a person. To have a person, you must have multiple persons, because by definition, a person is in eternal relationship or communion with at least one other person. But that makes absolutely no logical sense whatsoever, because you have to know what a thing is in and of itself. You have to know what a person is in order to even talk about or even have multiple persons communing one with another. So this is a huge mess. It's a huge quagmire, a metaphysical quagmire. Everything stems from the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, and then it works its way through everything: the doctrine of the Trinity, the doctrine of the incarnation, as well as the fall, the doctrine of the fall, and the doctrine of justification, and so on, which, hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to cover some of those other subjects in more detail as well. But what I'll be doing in the near future here is the next project I'll be starting concerns the two powers in heaven view that I mentioned earlier, and the milieu out of which Paul got his understanding of the identity of Christ. So with that, I'll let you go. Have a wonderful week, enjoy the rest of your weekend. This is Sunday. Have a great week coming up, and enjoy the warm weather we're finally having.